Some cats love catnip, some don't. This is my girl, Shotoku my girl, and I brought home a new toy yesterday. They paid absolutely no attention to it until I sprinkled catnip on it. And this morning, my girl, who I call Girly, or Girly Girl, is licking the catnip off it. Now she's going to play with the toy, obviously. I try to keep my stories to one era, at least. And the catnip reminded me of the days when we used to pick watercress out of the stream on our property, and also at my Aunt May's place in Lindenhurst. Aunt May had a poultry store right across the road from Popeye the Sailor's, a restaurant, and there was a stream that ran along the side of her property where watercress grew. I guess the stream emptied into the bay, which was right across Montauk Highway, or Merrick Road as it was known, and it was fresh water. So the watercress grew very thick there. At the far end of the stream, at the very back of Aunt May's property, there was a chicken house where she grew the chickens, and they laid the eggs that she sold in the store, along with the ducks that came from our farm. Now, I loved to collect the eggs, and Aunt May let me. And the chickens didn't bother me for some reason, so I would collect the eggs and bring them in to be sold at the store, along with the poultry, chickens, and the ducks. And even though I was just big enough to stand over the counter, to peek over the counter, that is, Aunt May let me help wait on the customers, which I loved doing. So she brought in a wooden crate, and I stood on the crate, and I was allowed to wait on the customers, but I was not allowed to work the cash register. Well, I couldn't have been more than 4 or 5 years old, so that made absolute sense. I didn't do math then, just as I don't do math now. I'm numerically dyslexic, so even though I read very well, I can't do numbers. That's a little more information than you probably needed. Anyway, Aunt May and Uncle Ben, who was a veteran of the war, who Aunt May had taken care of when he was sent home, and later they married, lived above the store in a pretty big apartment with Aunt May's 2 sons, well, Aunt May and Uncle Ben's 2 sons, Ray and Norman. Many's the time that I spent overnights at Aunt May's, and she was wonderful to me. I absolutely adored this woman, and she loved me, obviously. She was the only one who would take me ice skating at Jones Beach and sit there for hours while I ice skated all around and around and around and around the rink, until finally it just got too cold to stay out. One of the things I loved about staying at Aunt May's was their little dog. It was a little black and white spotted terrier sort, I guess, and Aunt May let it have the run of the apartment, but she didn't want to keep the doors open. They were glass French doors between the kitchen and the living room. So they had taken a pane of glass out of the bottom right of the door so that the little dog could go back and forth between the kitchen and the living room without Aunt May opening the doors or leaving them open. I suspect it probably had something to do with the heat in the apartment, but I really don't know. The dog would run back and forth, squeezing through the pane through the empty pane in the window, and I would follow on my hands and knees and go back and forth with the dog. And sometimes we'd roll around on the living room floor and play together, And other times we'd just go back and forth through the empty pane over and over and over again. This was one of my favorite places to be. It was before my younger sister was born, I suspect, although Mom might have been pregnant with Judy at the time. I really don't know. All I remember is loving to go to Aunt May's house and stay there with her for as long as they'd let me. That's it for today.